The orc woman standing in his doorway had ash-gray travel dust on her green skin, and exhaustion carved into every line of her face, but she met Kellen Roth's eyes without flinching when she said the words that had ended every other job before it started. "I cost too much to feed." Kellen stood in the threshold of his farmhouse, one hand still on the door frame, studying the woman who had walked 3 days from the hiring fair in Millbrook. She was taller than most human women but not towering, built strong through the shoulders and arms in the way of someone who had spent years doing real work. Her tusks were small, barely visible past her lower lip, and her dark hair hung in a practical braid down her back. She wore patched trousers and a shirt that had been mended so many times the original fabric was hard to identify. "How much do you eat?" he asked. She lifted her chin, defensive. "More than a human. More than 2 humans, probably. Orcs need more just to keep going. I can work harder and longer than any man you will find, but the food I have been turned away from 4 jobs this season because farmers did the math and decided I would eat more than I was worth." The autumn sun was setting behind her, casting long shadows across the yard. Kellen's fields stretched out in every direction, golden with wheat ready for harvest. He had advertised for help 2 weeks ago and gotten no responses until this woman had shown up, clearly expecting rejection. "What's your name?" he asked. "Orla Haskell." "Orla, I am Kellen Roth. You are hired." Her pointed ears twitched slightly. "You did not hear what I said. I will eat. I heard you fine. Harvest starts tomorrow at dawn. There is a room in the barn loft, clean straw and blankets. Supper is in an hour." He stepped back to let her pass. She did not move. "Why would you hire someone who will cost you more?" "Because I need the help and you are here. Because I saw you walk up that road and you are not limping even though you have been traveling for days. Because anyone desperate enough to warn away their employer before they even get the job is someone who will work honest." He gestured toward the barn. "Get settled. I will call you when food is ready." Orla walked past him slowly, like she expected the offer to evaporate. She smelled of road dust and sweat and something else, something wild that reminded him of the forest after rain. Kellen watched her cross to the barn, her stride steady despite obvious weariness. He went back inside and stared at his kitchen. He had made stew enough for 2 people by human standards. It would not be enough. Not if what she said was true, and he had no reason to doubt her. She had been honest about a thing that cost her work. That was rare enough to be worth trusting. Kellen ate quickly, gave Orla a generous portion that she accepted with visible surprise, and told her to sleep well. She thanked him in a voice that suggested she was not used to thanks being appropriate, and disappeared into the barn. He sat at his table after she left and did calculations on a slate. The wheat harvest would take 3 weeks with 2 people working full days. He had root vegetables, dried beans, salted pork, flour. Enough to feed 2 humans through the season and into winter. Not enough to feed himself and an orc woman who needed double rations. The solution was obvious. Kellen stood, pulled on his heavy coat and walked out into the night. The moon was nearly full, bright enough to see by. He went to his storage shed and dragged out the plow, checking the blade by moonlight. Still sharp enough. He hitched his 2 oxen, patient creatures who snorted at being woken but did not resist, and led them to the southern section of his property. The soil there was decent, not as rich as his main field but workable. He had left it fallow for 2 years. It would grow turnips, potatoes, winter squash, things that would store and stretch. Kellen set the plow blade and began to work. The earth turned in dark ribbons behind the plow. His shoulders ached within an hour. He kept going. The oxen plodded forward, their breath steaming in the cold air. He reached the end of one row and turned, started another. The moon tracked across the sky, his hands cramped around the plow handles. He switched his grip and continued. He had been 17 when the drought came, the year after his father died. That winter, he had eaten one meal every 2 days to make the food last. He had watched himself grow gaunt in the mirror, had felt his strength drain away until he could barely lift a bucket. He had survived barely and sworn that if he ever had anything, he would not hoard it. The new field took shape row by row. Kellen lost track of time. His world narrowed to the plow, the soil, the steady forward progress. When the moon began to set, he lit a lantern and hung it from the plow frame, working by its swinging light. Dawn was a gray line on the horizon when he finished the last row. Kellen unhitched the oxen, fed them, and fetched the seed bags. Turnips in this section, potatoes there. He worked methodically, his hands moving through familiar motions while his mind drifted somewhere past exhaustion into a strange, clear space where nothing existed except the next seed, the next hill of soil. The sun was fully up when Orla found him. She stood at the edge of the new field, staring. Kellen looked up from tamping down a potato mound and saw her expression, something raw and unguarded that she hid quickly behind careful neutrality. "You did this last night," she said. "Yes. Because of what I said. Because I eat too much." Kellen straightened, feeling every hour of work in his back and legs. "Because we will need the food." Seemed simpler to plant more than to ration what we have. Orla walked into the field toward him. She moved carefully, not disturbing his work. When she reached him, she did not speak for a long moment. Her dark eyes searched his face like she was looking for a trick, a cruelty hidden behind the gesture. "No one has ever," she started again. "People do not usually," she stopped again, frustrated. "It is just a field," Kellen said. His voice came out rougher than he intended, scraped raw with exhaustion. "Need to finish planting this section. Then we can eat breakfast and start on the wheat harvest. You have been awake all night. I will sleep tonight. You should sleep now. Should do a lot of things." He bent and placed another seed potato, covered it with soil. "Daylight is wasting." Orla crouched beside him and took the seed bag from his hands. "Show me what to plant where, then go inside and sleep for 4 hours. I will finish this and start cutting wheat. You are no good to anyone if you collapse." He wanted to argue, but his body betrayed him with a jaw-cracking yawn. 4 hours, then wake me." 4 hours, she agreed. Kellen showed her the planting pattern, watched her complete 2 rows to make sure she understood, and stumbled back to the house. He barely made it to his bed before sleep took him. He woke to afternoon sun and the smell of cooking onions. Disoriented, he lay still for a moment before memory returned. He had slept longer than 4 hours, much longer. Kellen dragged himself upright and walked to the kitchen. Orla stood at his stove, stirring something in his largest pot. She glanced over when he entered. "You let me oversleep." "You needed it. I finished planting the field and cut 3 rows of wheat. It is bundled and drying." She ladled stew into 2 bowls, gave him the smaller portion and kept the larger for herself. "Eat. Then we both work until sunset." The stew was good, rich with the vegetables he had stored and thick with barley. He ate mechanically, fuel more than pleasure. Orla finished her bowl and then ate a second, quickly, like she expected someone to take it away. They worked the wheat field until full dark, cutting and bundling in a steady rhythm. Orla was strong, stronger than Kellen, and she moved with an efficiency that came from years of practice. She did not waste motion. Every swing of the scythe was precise. They fell into a routine over the following days. Up at dawn, work until noon, break for a meal, work until sunset. Orla ate portions that would have seemed shocking if Kellen had not adjusted his thinking. She was not greedy. She was feeding a body that burned through fuel like a forge. When she worked, she generated heat, her green skin sheening with sweat even in the cool autumn air. The wheat harvest progressed steadily. Kellen found himself watching her when he thought she would not notice. The way she moved, the strength in her arms when she lifted a heavy bundle. The rare smile that crossed her face when they finished a particularly difficult section. She caught him looking one afternoon and raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing, just thinking. About how quiet it has been, having someone else here. I have worked alone for 5 years." "It is different." "Good different or bad different," he considered. "Good, mostly. You hum when you work." Orla looked mortified. "I did not realize I can stop." "I did not say it was bad." She studied him, then nodded slowly and went back to bundling wheat. After a moment she started humming again, soft and low, a tune he did not recognize. Kellen smiled and returned to his own work. 3 weeks into the harvest, he started leaving extra food near her place at the table. Not obviously, just an extra piece of bread, another ladle of stew. Orla never commented, but she ate everything, and sometimes he caught her looking at him with an expression he could not quite read. The wheat harvest finished on a cold morning in late October. They bundled the last sheaves and stood in the empty field, breath steaming. The wheat was safe in Kellen's barn, enough to last the winter and sell for a decent profit. "The turnips will be ready in a month," Orla said. "Potatoes a bit after that. The second field," she stopped. "What about it?" "It is a good field. You did good work." She turned to face him fully. "I need to pay you back somehow. For the planting, for the food. I can stay on and work, take a smaller wage." "No. No, you do not owe me anything. I hired you for the harvest, you helped bring it in, we are even." Orla's jaw tightened. "That is not how it works. You planted that entire field because of me, because I eat so much. That was extra work you would not have done otherwise. I would have let the ground sit fallow another year. Now I will have turnips and potatoes. That benefits me. You are not listening, I am listening fine. You think there is a debt, I am telling you there is not." Kellen kept his voice level. "I made a choice. It was my choice to make. You do not get to feel guilty about it." She stared at him. "You are the strangest human I have ever met, probably." "Most men would have," she gestured helplessly. "I do not even know, held it over me, expected something in return." "I am not most men. No, you are not." She said it quietly, almost to herself. The first frost came a week later. Kellen woke to find his windows etched with ice patterns and went outside to check on the second field. The turnips and potatoes were still growing, protected by mulch and their own hardy nature, but the cold meant winter was coming fast. Orla's contract ran through the end of harvest. Technically, it was fulfilled. She had stayed on to help with other work, mending fences and reinforcing the barn roof, but Kellen knew she would leave soon. The knowledge sat in his chest like a stone. He did not want her to go. The realization came gradually, then all at once. He had grown used to her presence. The sound of her humming, the way she made the farmhouse feel less empty, the competence she brought to every task. More than that, though, the way she laughed, rare but genuine. The gentleness in her hands when she handled the tools, keeping them sharp and well-maintained. The quiet moments in the evening when they sat by the fire and simply existed together. No words needed. Kellen did not know when it had shifted from companionship to something deeper. Somewhere between the first morning and now, he had fallen in love with the orc woman who had warned him she would cost too much. He did not know what to do about it. November brought the drought. It started as a dry spell, normal enough for the season. Then the dry spell stretched into 2 weeks with no rain, and the creek that ran through Kellen's property began to shrink. The second field needed water. The plants were young, still establishing themselves. Without rain, they would wither. Kellen and Orla hauled buckets from the creek, watering the field by hand. Back-breaking work, endless trips, the buckets heavy and the field large. The turnips and potatoes drank in the water and stayed alive, barely. The creek continued to shrink. On the third week of the drought, a man arrived at Kellen's door. Marcus Thorne, the grain buyer from Millbrook. Kellen knew him by reputation. Thorne bought grain from desperate farmers at cut rates, then sold it at market price and kept the difference. He was wealthy, well-dressed, and smiling in a way that made Kellen's skin crawl. "Mr. Roth, I heard you were having water troubles. I am managing. Are you? Because I have a proposal that might interest you." Thorne stepped uninvited into the kitchen, looking around with the assessing eye of someone pricing furniture. "I can supply water. I have rights to the Miller's Run Creek, 2 miles north. Clean water, plenty of it, enough to save your fields." "At what price?" "Half your wheat harvest. Delivered to my warehouse in Millbrook by mid-December." Kellen felt anger flash through him. Half the harvest was robbery. "That is too much." "Is it? How much is your crop worth if it all dies?" Thorne smiled. "I am offering a fair deal, water for wheat. Take it or leave it." "I will leave it." "Will you?" Thorne glanced out the window toward the second field. "That is a new field, is it not? Lot of work went into that planting. Shame to lose it all because you were too proud to accept help." Orla appeared in the doorway behind Thorne. She had been working in the barn. Her expression was cold. "He said no," she told Thorne. Thorne turned, saw her, and his smile curdled. "An orc, of course. Roth, if you are keeping livestock, you should feed them properly. This one looks half-starved." Orla moved before Kellen could react, closing the distance to Thorne in 2 strides. She did not touch him, but she loomed, using every inch of her height. "Leave. Now." Thorne stumbled backward, fear flashing across his face before he covered it with bluster. "You cannot threaten me." "I will have the law, you will have nothing," Kellen said flatly. "Get off my property, do not come back." Thorne left, practically running to his horse. He rode off toward Millbrook at a gallop. Kellen turned to Orla. "Thank you. He is right, though. The field will die without water. We will figure something out." "How? The creek is almost dry. We cannot carry enough to keep everything alive." Orla's voice was tight with frustration. "That field, you planted it for me. If it dies because of the drought, it is not your fault there is no rain. But it was for me. You would not have planted it if I had not said." She stopped, hands clenched into fists. Kellen crossed to her, moving slowly. He reached out and gently uncurled one of her fists, holding her hand. Her skin was warm, rough with calluses. "I planted it because I wanted to," he said. "Because keeping you fed mattered more than convenience. If it dies, that is not on you. We will find another way." Orla looked down at their joined hands. "Why do you keep doing this? Being so kind. I am nothing to you, just some orc you hired for a season. Is that what you think?" "What else would I think?" Kellen took a breath, then another. The words were hard to find. He was not a man used to speaking feelings. "You are not nothing. You have not been nothing for a while now." She met his eyes. "What am I then?" "Someone I do not want to lose." The silence stretched between them. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Finally, Orla spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I fell in love with you the morning I found you in the field, the morning after you planted it. I stood there looking at all that turned earth, and I thought," she swallowed hard. "I thought, this is what it feels like when someone cares if you live or die. I had never felt that before." Kellen's heart hammered in his chest. "I did not know. I did not tell you. You are human. I am orc. People do not, we do not." She gestured helplessly. "There are laws in some places, taboos. I thought maybe you were just kind, just a good man who would have done the same for anyone." "I would not have. I did it for you. I know that now." She smiled, small and uncertain. "What do we do about it?" We save the field, Kellen said. Together. Then we figure out the rest. The solution came from an unexpected source. Orla remembered a technique she had learned from an orc community in the north, a way to capture and condense fog into water. It required cloth nets stretched between poles, positioned to catch the morning mist. The fog would condense on the cloth and drip into collection barrels. They had fog. Cold autumn mornings brought it rolling off the hills in thick banks. They built the fog catchers in a single day, working frantically. Kellen had old sheets and canvas. Orla cut poles from the woodlot. They erected a dozen structures along the edge of the field, cloth nets strung tight and barrels positioned underneath. The first night they caught half a barrel. The second night, 3 barrels. By the end of the week they had a system, checking the catchers at dawn and hauling the water to the thirstiest sections of the field. It was just barely enough. The turnips and potatoes held on, growing slowly. Kellen and Orla worked the fog catchers every morning, then spent their days maintaining the system and doing other farm work. They fell into bed exhausted each night. Thorn did not return, but Kellen heard through a traveler that the grain buyer was angry, complaining in Millbrook that Kellen had wasted his generous offer. "Let him complain," Orla said when Kellen told her. "We do not need his water." 3 weeks after the fog catchers went up, it finally rained. A cold, soaking rain that lasted 2 days and refilled the creek. The second field drank deep, and the turnips and potatoes surged with new growth. Kellen stood in the rain, face turned up to the sky, and laughed. Orla joined him, spinning in a circle with her arms outstretched. They were both soaked in seconds. Neither cared. "We did it," Orla shouted over the rain. "We did it," Kellen agreed. She grabbed his hands and pulled him into a clumsy dance, mud squelching under their feet. He twirled her and she laughed, the sound bright and free. When they stopped, breathless, they were standing close. Rain ran down Orla's face, plastered her hair to her skull. She was beautiful. Kellen kissed her. She froze for half a heartbeat, then kissed him back. Her tusks pressed gently against his lips, strange and perfect. She tasted like rain and something uniquely her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she smiled. "Took you long enough," she said. "I am not good with words. I noticed. You are better with actions." She pulled him close again, resting her forehead against his. "Plant a field, build fog catchers, kiss the orc woman in the rain. Is that your way of saying you love me? I already said it once. Do I need to say it again? I would not mind hearing it. I love you, Kellen Roth." "You impossible, stubborn, generous man. I love you." "I love you too," he said, and meant it with every part of himself. The turnips came out of the ground in early December, huge and healthy. The potatoes followed a week later. Kellen and Orla harvested together, filling baskets and barrels. The second field had produced more than Kellen had dared hope. They set aside enough for themselves and took the rest to sell in Millbrook. The market was crowded, winter buying in full swing. Thorn was there, selling grain. He saw them and his expression turned sour. "I see you managed without my help," he said, voice dripping false courtesy. "We did," Kellen said simply. "Shame. You could have saved yourself a lot of trouble." Thorn looked at Orla, his lip curling. "Or maybe trouble is what you wanted, keeping company with her kind." Kellen felt anger surge, but Orla put a hand on his arm. "He is trying to get a reaction. Do not give him one." "Listen to your orc," Thorn said. "At least she knows her place." "My place is beside him," Orla said clearly, loud enough that people nearby turned to look. "As his partner. We brought in the harvest together. We saved the field together, and we are together if you need that spelled out more plainly." Thorn's face reddened. "That is unnatural, disgusting. You should be ashamed, Mr. Thorn." The speaker was an older woman Kellen recognized, one of the established farmers. "I think you should move along. No one here wants to listen to your bitterness." Other vendors murmured agreement. Thorne looked around, saw he had no support, and stalked away. The woman turned to Kellen and Orla. "I am Miriam. I remember when you first took over your father's farm, Kellen. You have done well, and you," she nodded to Orla, "you are Orc, yes?" "I am. My son married an Orc woman last spring, caused a stir, but they are happy. It gets easier." Miriam smiled. "Welcome to the market. Let me introduce you to some people who will not give you trouble." They sold all their produce and made connections with farmers who nodded at Orla without suspicion. It was not universal acceptance, but it was a start. Riding home in the wagon, supplies packed in the back, Kellen reached over and took Orla's hand. "You told the whole market we are together. Was I supposed to hide it?" "No, I was not sure how you wanted to handle it." "I want to handle it by not hiding. By telling anyone who asks that I love you and you love me, and if they have a problem with that, they can take it up with someone who cares." She squeezed his hand. "Unless you want to hide." "No, I want everyone to know." "Good." December settled in cold and clear. Kellen and Orla worked to winterize the farm, storing food and reinforcing structures against snow. They worked side by side, easy with each other in a way that felt natural. At night they sat by the fire. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they simply existed together in comfortable quiet. Orla slept in the farmhouse now, in Kellen's bed, and waking up beside her was the best part of his day. The winter solstice arrived, shortest day of the year. Kellen spent the afternoon preparing, hauling the kitchen table outside and setting it near the barn. Orla watched, puzzled, as he brought out benches and laid a fire in the outdoor pit. "What are you doing?" "You will see. Help me bring out the food." They carried out dishes, platters, bowls. Roasted turnips from the second field, potatoes mashed with butter, bread fresh baked that morning, dried apples stewed with cinnamon, smoked pork, cheese, pickled vegetables. More food than two people could possibly eat. Kellen arranged it all on the table until the wood groaned under the weight. "This is too much," Orla said. "It is exactly right." Kellen took both her hands. "I wanted to do this properly, with ceremony." "Do what?" "The first thing you ever said to me was that you cost too much to feed. You thought that was a problem, something to be ashamed of. I want you to understand that it never was. Not to me." Orla's eyes were very bright. "I planted the second field because you were worth the work," Kellen continued. "We saved it together because we are better together, and I want us to be together for the rest of our lives if you will have me. Kellen, there is a place at this table for you, always, for as long as you want it. I am asking you to stay, to marry me if that is something you want, to be my wife and my partner and the person I wake up beside every morning." Orla was crying now, tears running freely down her green cheeks. "You prepared a feast to propose, I wanted you to see. All this food, all this abundance. That is what I want our life to be, full, generous, enough for both of us and more besides." "You planted a second field," she said wonderingly. "You actually planted a second field." "I would plant a dozen fields if that was what it took." Orla laughed, the sound breaking on a sob. "You ridiculous, wonderful man. Yes, yes, I will marry you. Yes to all of it." Kellen pulled her close and kissed her. She kissed him back, fierce and joyful. When they broke apart, she was smiling. "Can we eat this feast now? Because it looks incredible and I am starving." That was the idea. They sat at the table under the winter stars and ate until they were both stuffed. The food was good, made better by joy. Kellen had never been happier. Orla glowed in the firelight, laughing at his jokes and telling stories about her childhood in an Orc settlement. "My mother would have liked you," she said at one point. "She always said humans were too stingy. You would have proved her wrong." Maybe I will meet her someday. Maybe. Orla looked down at her plate. She died when I was 16, but I think she would have approved. I am sorry. Do not be. It was a long time ago. She reached across the table and laced her fingers through his. I have you now. That is what matters. They married in January on a day when the sun turned the snow into fields of diamonds. The ceremony was small, just a traveling priest, and Miriam the farmer as witness. Kellen and Orla spoke their vows standing in front of the farmhouse, both of them bundled against the cold. I promise to work beside you, Kellen said, to share every burden and every joy, to never let you go hungry, to love you for as long as I live. I promise to be your partner, Orla said, to give you my strength and my heart, to build a life with you, to love you through everything. The priest pronounced them married. Kellen kissed his wife. Miriam cheered. They held a small celebration inside, warm and loud. Miriam brought her orc daughter-in-law, a woman named Greta, who hugged Orla and whispered something that made her laugh. There was food and music and joy. When everyone had left and the house was quiet again, Kellen and Orla sat by the fire. So this is marriage, Orla said, apparently. Feels about the same as yesterday, disappointed, not even a little. She leaned against his shoulder. I have been thinking. When spring comes, we should plant a third field. We do not need a third field, we have plenty. Not for us, for others. There must be more people like me, orcs who get turned away because they eat too much. We could hire them, feed them properly, give them work and a place to be safe. Kellen considered. That would be good. We would need more housing. Maybe another barn. We can build it together. Together, he agreed. The fire crackled. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and steady. Kellen thought about the future stretching ahead of them, full of work and challenge and the kind of bone-deep satisfaction that came from building something meaningful. He thought about the orc woman who had stood in his doorway and warned him she would cost too much. He thought about how wrong she had been. She had cost him one night of labor and brought him a lifetime of love, worth it, 1,000 times worth it. I love you, he said. I love you too, Orla replied. They sat in the firelight, husband and wife, and planned their future while the winter wind sang outside. There would be new fields in spring, new workers, new challenges. But they would face it all together, and that made all the difference. The farmhouse was warm. The pantry was full. And the woman beside him was home in every sense of the word. Kellen Roth had everything he needed.